What's up? And welcome. And this is the story of the first black family on television. Yep, that's right. Good times, good times, good times. Okay, look. I had to do that. Now, how many of you guys have heard of Good Times? Everybody has. All of you guys have heard of Good Times. And you know what? Good Times was out before I was born, you were born, but we all have heard about Good Times. Good Times is a story of a Chicago family living in the projects. And what was unique about it is that we were a family from Chicago living in the projects. So we were actually good times. We were actually this show. Now, here's the situation dealing with this show. Now we're looking at a situation in which you have so many different obstacles and outlooks. Translation: this show is responsible for being made by a couple of miracles that happen. One, you gotta give thanks to All in the Family. That's right, All in the Family with Archie Bunker, Edith. Look at here, Jefferson. You're not gonna come up in here and tell me how to run my household. Sit down, Edith. So, Archie. Okay, Archie, I'll get you a coffee. Shut up, Edith. So, anyway, Archie Bunker is like the spinoff of all spinoff shows. Meaning that this was a landscape show that just was launching TV shows from it. Meaning the Jeffersons came from here. Maude came from here, the TV show Maude. And Maude is played by Bea Arthur of, you know her from The Golden Girls, where she plays basically the same character in every film. A strong woman that does not seem to need a man for anything. Now, Bea Arthur played Edith's sister, and she always got on Archie's nerves because she wouldn't take any of his lip. So they spun a show off for her called Maude, based on her character. And Maude had a maid, and her maid was Florida Evans, whose husband was James Evans, played by Esther Rolle and James Amos rather. Now, here's the thing. Esther Rolle just started recently acting. She didn't start acting until she was in her 40s. And she was the maid. And James Amos would appear on the show sometimes as her husband. Everybody liked and gravitated to the maid, Florida. So Norman Lear, what's his name? Eric Monty. They had an idea to pitch for a black family on television. Growing up in the project, Norman Lear, this man is all about grit. This man is all about controversy. If you look at any Norman Lear production, it's gotta have grit. All in the Family, there was some real racial issues brought up on All in the Family that needed to be addressed, that people don't talk about on television shows. There was never a fluff moment on that show, and just so happened there was never going to be like that on any Norman Lear production. That's not his style, it's not his taste. He's not the Laverne and Shirley guy. He can't do those type of things. It's got to have some grit. And that's one thing I respected about Norman Lear's work, is that the issues that's going on, he is not afraid to throw that into a series. That's something that's missing in today's time. Now, they tell Esther Rolle that they're thinking of spinning off a show for her. And, you know, there's the show Maude, she was doing so great with Maude, that they were looking to move her to another show. So Maude is, you know, is doing okay. The direction wasn't really there, and they kind of saw that Maude was going to probably come to an end quicker than they thought. So they wanted to prepare for the next thing and probably bounce it to another, you know, network, or move it around. So Esther Rolle said, okay, we'll do this Black Family. Now, the Black Family script that they had, that Norman Lear had visioned, didn't have the father. Now, when Monty brought it up, he said, hey, you know, no, it's a mother, dad, and then their 3 children. You know, that's the way it is. And they were like, well, can we do one with just the mom taking care of the 3 kids without... I just don't think it'll be funny if we got a serious... I don't know how we're going to make a serious black dad funny. I just don't see how... Because this is a comedy, you know. Good Times is supposed to make people laugh. And I don't know if we could do that with a serious black dad. So they went into negotiations of, you know, back and forth. So Esther Rolle said, well, I'll tell you like this. I won't have anything to do with Good Times if I don't have a black husband. And that's it. I want a father for my children. So what happened? They gave in. And that's what didn't make sense to me. I'm like, you already had the husband, which was James Amos, who played her husband on Maude. Why couldn't you just write him in as the full-time husband on the show? So they tried it out, and they test screened him, did everything, and it was to perfection. They knew each other. It worked to a T. Now, casting everybody else. Norman Lear already knew he wanted the character he knew that he wanted for Michael. He went and got him easy. Saw him in a play. He was a stage actor. Everyone thought he was going to be a big movie star when he got older. He was an adorable 9-10-year-old kid who was doing Raisin in the Sun on stage. They actually bought him out of his contract so that he could do Good Times. And Bernadette, who played Thelma, she was a fresh new face, never acted before. She came from singing and dancing. and Jimmy J.J. Walker to play Junior. They wanted the son, the oldest son, to be funny, so they were looking for comedians to come in and take up the comedic slack for the program, to give it levity whenever the show gets a little too heavy. They need that levity on the show, so they needed a comedian. So they were looking at all the black young comics coming up on the show, and I mean coming up at that time, and they looked around and they said, whoa, who's this guy? And they were like, well, who is who? And they looked around, and there it was. It was nobody, no other than Jimmy J.J. Walker. Matter of fact, it was one of the cast members, I think, that went and saw his stand-up and said, this is your guy. This is your guy. He didn't even have really a test read. He did like one set of lines, and they said, oh, that's him. You're him. You got the role. So he got cast as the part of JJ, James Jr. So now they wanted to have someone come in to be like the neighbor of the show. Someone who could be her friend in the program, who lived across the hall. And Bologna Woods was brought in by a Broadway singer and dancer, Janet Duval. And Janet Duval was good friends with Esther Rowe. They knew each other. And Esther Rowe was incensed when she got the role. And they were like, you guys sure you guys are friends? And she thought, like, yeah, we never had a problem, never had an argument or nothing. And that's the thing. Sometimes you don't know how people really feel about you until you got to work with them. So they're thinking everything is good here. And then they find out, boom, it's not good. We have a problem. We have a major problem. And that major problem was the fact that sorry about that. The major problem was Esther Rowe didn't hire her, and she had creative control in the show, who got hired, who didn't. That's what she was told when she got the show. And here they are hiring people that to be her best friend that she didn't approve of. So of course Janet stayed on the show, but it kind of put her like, why were you tripping that I got this role? This is like a supporting role. Like what did it matter to you that I got the role? It was one of those type of situations. Like, what do you mean? So after this was played out for the general public and the world could see it in its consumptions, the whole spectrum started to turn. Everyone had an idea of what this show was going to be about, and everybody was anxious to see the first black family on television. And James Amos, he came up from Roots. You know, that was his big claim to fame, you know, before they put him in a giant pot and cooked him. Now, I was remembering a lot of different things at that time when my parents was talking about good times and I was young, a little kid, and it would come into syndication. And I always noticed something. Michael was completely, like, from when he was younger, to be so awake and so awoke, and then when he got older, he just was about nothing. And I watched that happen on this show and didn't understand it then. You know, when I was younger, I was just like, man, Michael changed. He got older. And he's like, yeah, he grew up. which means that they wanted to tackle these issues that was going on, but they were happening in real life, in real time. During the 70s, and King had just got assassinated. You had the Black Panther Party going on at that time. You had a lot of things going on. So when they brought these issues up on the show, to have a younger kid like Michael tell you these stories was a lot easier, because you could just blow it off as a kid, you know, just following, you know, what he's reading in the papers and news. But the parents and no one else really gravitate to it, and they make the whole show about it. So as the show goes on, it's about this family, and they're going through it. And the very first season was great reviews, everything. Now Jimmy Walker coming in there, and the way he comes in there is almost like he's a comedian. He comes in like he's getting ready to do a stand-up. He's like, I'm good at this. I'm good at this. So the way he walked in and prepared to do it was incredible. He came in there with very big confidence, that big smile, and went in there and did his part, and he just blew everyone away. And the reason why he did it, how he did it, he didn't try to. He was just being himself. And it shocked everybody, because when he came in, he knew everybody's lines. He knew his lines. He knew the cast members' lines. He knew everything. He didn't have to say, hey, what's my line? By him being a comedian, remembering a whole set when you go out on stage is way more incredible. Okay? To be able to remember that. So his practice of remembering a set when you got hecklers and everyone jumping down your throat, and doing this in comedy clubs and trying to remember that, it was nothing for him to remember a script. He could just remember. It's nothing but a conversation to him. So he's recalling the conversation. So when he hears someone say something in the line, he knows exactly where he's supposed to be with his lines. So for him, it was nothing but a walk in the park. But to producers and directors, they like, man, this guy here is sharp when he picks it up. We just need you to take some little small acting classes. We'll set it up. We'll pay for it. You just take a couple of acting classes. Nope, I don't want to do it. He wouldn't. He was a prima donna already, right? And they were moving in a whole new boat. And it ticked Esther Rolle off, because here it is, the writers are gravitating more towards Jimmy J.J. Walker. And James Amos and Esther Rolle's like, look here, Jack. This role's supposed to be about Florida and James Evans, a black family. It ain't supposed to be about JJ. Now you gonna write some stuff for these kids. You got these other kids just sitting around here watching JJ go dynamite every day. So, to try to help the show along, Esther Rolle would not talk to Jimmy Walker. She never really had a conversation with him off the set. I mean, really. So, after the first season, everybody said, man, that sister of yours is fine. Thelma, everywhere he went and did comedy shows, they was, man, that show Good Times is great. And that Thelma. So he's thinking, he comes up with an idea when they shooting next season, so she can get out there and the writers will want to write for her more. If she was to take one of those, her in a bikini, doing a centerfold shot in a bikini in a magazine, nothing like Hustler or something like that. But he was trying to suggest going out doing photo shoots and things of that nature, you know, because he's like, she's got an amazing body. You know, she should go out and, you know, she's in dance and all these things. She should just, you know, show her some skin, you know, not just like just her in a bathing suit. That blew everybody up. That blew up Norman Lear. It blew up the producers. It blew up James Amos, and definitely blew up Esther Rowe. She didn't speak to him. She treated it like it was an episode of Good Times. I'm gonna let your father talk to you. Talk to him, James. So, next thing you know, James Amos comes up to him. Look here, Jack. How dare you suggest that we gonna put our little girl out there in a bikini in a magazine? If you suggest that again, I'll break my foot off in your royal. So that's exactly how where everything was going at that time. You know, everything had a gravitas of going in these directions. But we never seen it hit the rock bottom like it did until like now. So going into that, he got ringed. So that was his last time trying to help the situation along. Now, throughout this second season, people who were, I'm so grateful to be on this show and this and that. You had Janet Duval, who she was a jack of all trades. She had a singing CD out. She had all these cosmetic lines. She had all these things going on, and she was trying to get people attached to. And she was a good-hearted person. It's just that she didn't really have anything. She was on the show for maybe 3 to 4 minutes of every episode. She might come in, they fold clothes and have a conversation. That's normally in the beginning of the program. So when they're in the beginning of the program, she'll be with Florida and they'll have their moments. And she'll see the kids and they'll be like, oh, it's Bologna. Hey, kids. She come in and she does her little part and then she goes off the show. And that's how it went. So she wants all the wardrobe people. She's making all of these, I need new wigs. I need this done. I need that done. They're like, wait a minute. Like, you're only getting maybe 4 minutes an episode and you're tying up the wrong people. So now, here's some of the issues now that are happening in the second season. All of a sudden, the white writers don't quite understand black humor. And that became an obstacle because you had black writers who were there also. But some writers gravitated more to certain actors. Esther Rowe had somebody that really followed her vision of the original plan of going with the family. The dad and James, you know, the dad and mom, then the kids. So the storyline's about those two. But the ratings suggest that the show should go towards JJ and make all majority of the stories about him. He's selling the show. People love him. JJ's funny. We love JJ. So the dynamic of the show was about him, and the dad, James Amos, didn't want this show to become a JJ show where he just yells dynamite and a bunch of stupid things. And JJ, Jimmy Walker, felt like, man, they just dump it. Everybody's just dumping on me. Like, I just walk out and say dynamite and walk off the show. You know, it's not my fault. People liked Jimmy Walker. I'm sorry. So now, a lot of people are not speaking to each other. Like Byrne didn't really speak with Jimmy Walker too much after that, because she had a lot of dignity in herself to do that thing, especially when he brought up the swimsuit thing. You know, it just was a weird feeling to be associated with conversating with him. Even her parents or people that was on her team, you know, they kind of despised him. And see, this is when, you know, blacks had a lot of dignity, you know, and they really went by morals. So just being in a bikini back then in the 70s was considered, hey, we should slow down. Hey, what are we thinking here? We gotta just slow this thing down some. See, all of these things had to be carefully navigated because you didn't want to step on the wrong person's foot doing the wrong thing. So now, with all of this being, you know, above and beyond what everybody else was thinking, the whole direction changed yet again. As Michael complains, he wants more. He wants more story and more time devoted to him, right with Byrne and right with the neighbor, Bologna. So everyone is complaining. And Monte and everybody's fighting with Norman Lear, who they're trying to tell them this doesn't work for me now. Everyone has voices now. Season 2 was the turmoil season. So all of these things are going in there and imploding. So Monte, who was like, he already had a deal. He was working on his film that he was making called Cooley High. Once I got a hit movie on my hands. Once this done, I don't need this no more. I'm out. Y'all can have it. And that's what he did. After the second season, Monte walked away. The creator of Good Times walked away. He couldn't deal with the fighting. You know, and it was sad because this is the first black family on television and they don't get along. They are all arguing back and forth. And it seemed like everyone was against Jimmy Walker, and that's how he felt like people didn't like him. Now, the show is heading into a third season. And James is really being a problem. And they're like, look, man, I don't know what we're gonna do, but James Amos is like really pushing the narrative of he needs this or he needs that, or Jimmy Walker, and we need this for the kids, and they did these writings, they tried them. They say, look, we made an episode about Michael, we made an episode about Thelma. People are not gravitating to them. They all want to know what JJ is doing. We did an episode about Florida, and we did something about you and the parents. We did everything that we could do to try to show you, no matter how much you want this story to be more about you, the watching audience loves JJ. Okay, they love JJ. So the writers are trying to get the actors to understand that you have your job to do, we have our job to do, and we have bosses and everybody behind us like Norman Lear, who sees their job is to navigate those numbers. Because the second season, Good Times shot all the way up. So they were like in the top 10 best shows. They went from like 25th to like in the top 10. They were making it off the strength of JJ. Then everything started to fall apart again. people imploding. So finally, they said, man, we gotta have to do this show without the dad. You know, they was like, you know, start preparing and writing around that, because this is not gonna work. And they decided to give him a raise. James Amos got a raise to keep him happy. They gave him a bigger raise on the show to just deal with it. Then he did an interview, I believe, in either Ebony or Jet, who were saying Not So Good Times, where he just talked about the show, and it ticked him off, and they just fired him, effective immediately. And it was so rudely the way he was fired. They basically was telling him, like, we didn't really want you on the show anyway, and look what happens. You know, and then we gave you a raise, and this is how you thank us for the raise that you got. Okay, now you're just gone. You're terminated. So they fire him and kill him off the show. And when they do that, Esther Rolle is trying to hold the show herself, and the dynamic was gone, because they thought, like, well, now we can make the show really about JJ. And Esther Rolle didn't want any parts of that. So she's like, look, I need a husband on the show, or something's got to change. I can't, this thing isn't working. So they brought in Sam to be that father figure to come on the show, and that was her love interest, so she could have someone to play off of. And I thought he did great, but he was not liked. People liked James Evans. He reminded them of a lot of their dads that a lot of people had in the 70s. To take no crap, no nonsense, hard working. Look, I just worked 15 hours, Jack. You know, one of those guys. So definitely people gravitated more to him than Sam, the business owner, the black business owner. You own my own business. And of course, it was out there, but in the projects, it wasn't a lot of those. So a lot of people didn't like Sam. They like, hey man, who is this guy y'all got in here with Florida? We don't like that at all. So the show was about done. So Esther Rolle was like, look, I want some changes done. I'm just tired of these JJ shows. So she left the show. And the show went to Bologna. Bologna was watching the kids. They brought in Penny from downstairs, Janet Jackson's daughter, to be on the show. And she brought Janet Jackson in. And from that point on, you know, Janet was on the show, and there was an episode she was in love with JJ. That was about the most conversation they ever had, because he would not talk to kids. Jimmy Walker was like, I had nothing to say to kid actors, so I never really spoke to her on the set. But it started her career off, and who could forget the episode with Penny and the Iron? Nobody will ever forget that. And they really focused on abuse at the time, so it was quite brave for them to go down that road. And Thelma brought in her boyfriend. You know, it was a whole different era. So eventually Esther Rolle came back to the show. You know, then they started making, you know, stories about her driving a school bus full of kids and things. They decided to make some episodes more about her. But some of the writers who left the show, some of the writers who was on the show, all of those guys who were fighting one another to try to get things done their way towards their characters and highlight some of their characters that they were writing for and assisting with, a lot of them were frustrated because they didn't understand how television works or even how film works. Sometimes you write something and it won't go on the screen. And that's frustrating when you spent all your time staying up writing and it don't work. That happens a lot. So that's Good Times. And years later, like, the show ended, I think, in the 5th or 6th season. And once it ended, that was it. Michael and Thelma never really worked again in television. He went to Africa or something. Then, you know, James Amos and Esther Rose started doing things, you know, with the community. And of course, Mr. McDowell, James Amos, we've seen him in many things after the fact. Jimmy Walker, we basically saw him do a couple of movies, black exploitation films, and then he went solely to stand-up comedy. Now, the problem is he's still producing, writing, and he doesn't get a lot of television love because he was deemed as hard to work with. The more popular he got, he was aware of it. And it just fed the ego that came through the door the very first day to do it. You know, the ego was always on the line. And he was deemed as, well, he doesn't want to listen. He doesn't take direction well. It's like having a police record. You know, it's like they pull up your file, they read your file, and people in the business have relationships. They're just not going to go through it. Then he kind of aged out. You know, he was just like, I don't need this. I could do stand-up forever. And he kind of aged out. And now you see these roles go to these actors who actually built relationships and actually went in and did certain things. Things that Jimmy Walker did, bringing comedians on to Good Times, that didn't kind of get paid back to him. You know, somebody say, you know what, you gave me my shot. You got me on television. I was on national television on CBS because of you. You know what I'm going to do? Now that I'm here and you where you at, I'm going to give you a leg up. I'm going to help you out here. That wasn't really happening for him. And a lot of people had to be reminded of the things that he did. And that's the most insulting position to be in, is the position of needing help from someone. That's the most hurtful. To tell someone, I need you. I need help. I can't do it myself. You know, that's hard. That's really hard. So for someone to continuously try to chop and climb a mountain, to have these obstacles pull them back down, it's alarming. Now, we'll see what happens down the road, but as of right now, those guys rarely even speak to each other. They had a 40-year reunion for Good Time. 40 years. And Merrill Griffin, I think there was 10 years out at that time. 10 years. And Merrill Griffin used to bring the shows back together and have them on there and talk to them like, hey, what was it like since you guys, like, oh, and everybody was on the show, all the old TV shows. They'll get out there and start talking. One Life to Live and all these people, they're on the show. Oh, well, we've been having a great time, and yeah, we still keep in contact. They tried to get Good Times. Wasn't gonna happen. Wasn't gonna happen at that time, because like Jimmy Walker said one time, I don't even know Esther Rowe. I've never had a phone conversation with her. I never spoke to Esther Rowe ever. I couldn't tell you anything about her or James Amos. He's like, we spoke for the first time in like 40 years at the reunion, and I could basically tell you I still don't know nothing about him. We don't keep in contact. So that was that. He couldn't tell you anything. And the rest of the cast members too, they really did not keep in contact with one another. And it's a shame that the first black family on television imploded the way they did. But that's the story of Good Times. Now, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you for giving me your ear for 40 minutes to explain this out in full everything. And donate to the page if you get a chance to. You can click the link in the description box. That's where my super chat is. Or you could hit the Streamlab. I mean the Cash App. The name is Carcino on the Cash App. Once again, and thank you all. I'm out.